My husband, he'll come.
The rope burned against her wrists, but Tebogo Tuyen barely felt it anymore. Pain had a way of becoming quiet when fear got loud enough. 1 second she had been walking out of St. Aurel Medical Center, her scrubs still warm from a double shift, her ID badge tapping softly against her chest with every step. Her mind had been somewhere else entirely, on a patient she didn't want to lose, on whether she had enough time to call home, on the simple, fragile rhythm of a life that had finally begun to feel stable. She had been thinking about her husband, not the man the world whispered about, just Lam. The way he stood too still when he was worried, the way he always waited for her to speak first, like her words mattered more than his own, the way he promised, quietly, seriously, that his world would never reach her. She believed him. She still did. Then the van door slid open. Fast. Wrong. Too close. A hand clamped over her mouth before her body could even understand what was happening. The world tilted, sharp, violent, unreal. Her bag hit the ground. Her badge snapped sideways. The night swallowed her voice before it could become a scream. And just like that, she was gone. Now, tied to a chair under cold, flickering light, Tebogo forced her breathing to slow. Her chest rose unevenly beneath the dark stain spreading across her scrubs. Her shoulders ached from the way they had been pulled back. Every sound felt too close. Every shadow felt like it was watching. Behind her, boots moved. Metal clicked. A voice muttered something she couldn't fully hear. Not rushed, not panicked. That was what scared her most. They weren't afraid. One of them stepped in front of her, lifting a phone, recording. "Say it again," he said. Her throat tightened. For a second, nothing came out. Then, barely above a whisper,
My husband,
"My
he'll
husband."
come.
Her voice broke. "He'll come." The man smiled, not kindly, not uncertainly, just amused, like she had said something small, something foolish. The camera kept recording, and somewhere, miles away, a phone began to ring. Lam Tuyen didn't pick up on the first ring, or the second. He stood in front of the glass wall of his office, the city stretched beneath him in quiet, obedient light. A glass of whiskey rested untouched in his hand, the ice long since melted. The third ring echoed longer. He answered. He didn't speak. He listened. The voice on the other end was confident, careless, the kind of confidence that only comes from not understanding what you've just done. A number was named, a deadline, a threat. Lam's expression didn't change, not when they mentioned her, not when they described where she was, not even when the line went silent. For a moment, there was nothing, just the city, just the glass, just the quiet. Then, he lifted the glass slightly, set it down, and spoke. "Send me the video. Now." The first thing Tebogo noticed was the smell. Not the sharp, sterile scent of antiseptic she was used to, but something heavier. Damp concrete, oil, metal that had been sitting too long in the dark. It pressed into her lungs with every breath. She kept her eyes closed for a moment, not out of weakness, but to listen. Footsteps. 2, no 3 different rhythms, one heavier than the others. A faint scrape, like something being dragged across the floor. The low hum of a generator somewhere nearby. Not a hospital, not anywhere she knew. Her fingers flexed instinctively, and pain flared along her wrists. Bound, tight enough to bruise. Her shoulders ached from the way her arms had been pulled behind her, forcing her chest forward. Alive, then. That mattered. Slowly, she opened her eyes. The light above her flickered, harsh and white, cutting through the dimness in uneven pulses. Shadows stretched and shifted across the walls. Shapes moved behind her, armed, watching, waiting. Tebogo swallowed, her throat dry. The copper taste in her mouth hadn't faded. Her gaze dropped briefly to her chest, dark stains spreading across the blue fabric of her scrubs. Not fresh, but not old enough to ignore. She exhaled carefully. Think. Panicking wouldn't help. It never did. Not in an emergency room. Not here. One of the men stepped forward. He wasn't in a rush. That was what made it worse. His boots echoed softly against the concrete as he stopped just a few feet in front of her. His face was half-shadowed beneath a cap, but his eyes were clear enough. Measuring. "You're awake," he said. Tebogo didn't answer. He tilted his head slightly, like he had expected more. "Good," he added, reaching into his pocket. A phone appeared in his hand. The others shifted behind her. One of them let out a quiet chuckle, low and careless, like this was routine, like she was. The man in front of her lifted the phone, angling it toward her face. The screen reflected faintly in his eyes. Recording. Tebogo's heartbeat stuttered once, then steadied. She understood now. Ransom. Proof of life. Her gaze didn't drop, didn't break. "My name is Tebogo Tuyen." The name felt heavier here, louder than it should have been. The man nodded slightly, as if ticking something off a list. "Good," he murmured. "Now listen carefully." He stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough to feel deliberate. "You're going to tell your husband that you're safe, that we're taking care of you, and that if he wants you back—" He paused, just long enough for the words to settle. "He'll do exactly what we say." Behind her, one of the men shifted his grip on his rifle. The metal clicked softly. Tebogo's breathing stayed even. Safe. The word almost made her laugh, but she didn't. Instead, she looked straight into the camera. For a brief moment, just a flicker, something in her expression changed. Not fear, not exactly. Recognition. Of what this meant, of what was coming. "My name is Tebogo Tuyen. I'm okay." The lie settled between them. The man watched her closely. Satisfied. "Good," he said again. He pulled the phone back, glancing down at the screen as the recording stopped. For a moment, no one spoke. Then one of the others asked, almost casually, "You think he'll pay?" The man's mouth curved slightly. "Oh," he said, slipping the phone back into his pocket. Tebogo didn't move, didn't speak. But somewhere, beneath the fear, beneath the pain, beneath the tight pull of the restraints, a quiet certainty settled in her chest. Not about the money, not about them, about him. They thought they had taken something simple, something easy. They hadn't, and they didn't know it yet, but they were about to find out. It had been raining the night she met him. Not a gentle rain, the kind that blurred headlights into long streaks of light and turned the pavement into a mirror that reflected everything back at you, distorted, uncertain. Tebogo had just finished a shift that felt like it would never end. Her feet ached, her head throbbed faintly behind her eyes, and her scrubs clung slightly to her skin from the humidity. The hospital doors slid open behind her, releasing a breath of sterile air into the storm, and then she was alone with the sound of rain hitting concrete. She hadn't planned to stop, but she did, because he didn't look like someone who belonged there. He stood just outside the edge of the hospital awning, unmoving, as if the rain didn't touch him the same way it touched everything else. Dark suit, soaked through, hair pushed back, water tracing down the sharp line of his jaw. One hand pressed lightly against his side. Not dramatic, not obvious, but enough. Enough for her to notice. Tebogo hesitated only a second before stepping toward him. "You're bleeding," she said. He looked at her then. Not startled, not defensive, just aware. "I'm fine," he replied. His voice was calm, controlled, like the answer had already been decided before she asked the question. She almost left it there. Almost.
But something in the way he stood, too still, too deliberate, told her he wasn't. "You're not," she said quietly, "and if you collapse out here, you won't be." A pause. Rain filled the space between them. Then, slowly, he lowered his hand. Dark red had already soaked through the fabric. Not fresh, not shallow. Tebogo exhaled once, steadying herself. "Come inside." He didn't move right away. His eyes stayed on her, searching, not for weakness, not for hesitation, but for something else entirely, something quieter. Trust, maybe, or the absence of fear. Finally, he nodded. Inside, the fluorescent lights made everything sharper, clearer. The world returned to its rigid order, machines humming, distant voices calling out, the familiar rhythm of controlled urgency. Tebogo worked quickly. Gloves, gauze, pressure. She didn't ask unnecessary questions, didn't push when he didn't answer. She focused on what mattered, the angle of the wound, the depth, the bleeding that needed to stop before anything else could. "You should have come sooner," she murmured, more to the work than to him. "I couldn't," he said. She glanced up briefly, not at his words, but at how he said them. Simple, final. No explanation offered, none expected. When she finished, she stepped back slightly, pulling off her gloves. "You'll need stitches, and you should stay for observation." "I won't." There was no defiance in it, no edge, just certainty. Tebogo studied him for a moment longer than necessary. Most people, when they were hurt, looked smaller somehow, softer, like pain stripped something away from them. He didn't. If anything, he seemed contained, held together by something stronger than the injury itself. "Then at least let me make sure you don't bleed out on your way home," she said. A faint shift touched his expression, not quite a smile, but close enough to count. "Lam," he said after a moment. She blinked. "What?" "My name," he clarified. "Lam." "Tebogo," she replied. "I know." That made her pause. But before she could ask, he continued, his voice quieter now. "You're not afraid." It wasn't a question. She held his gaze. "No," she said simply. Another pause. Longer this time. Something passed between them, unspoken but understood in a way that didn't need words. And then, just before he turned to leave, he said it. Carefully, deliberately. "If you choose to be part of my life," he began, his voice low, steady, "then my world will never touch yours." Tebogo frowned slightly. "I don't even know your world." "You don't need to." Rain still fell outside, soft now, distant. She should have walked away then, should have let the moment end like any other. But she didn't, because something in his promise didn't feel like a warning. It felt like a vow, and somehow, she believed him.
The video arrived without a name, just a file. No greeting, no warning. Lam watched it once, then again. The room didn't change around him. The city still glowed beyond the glass. The air still carried the faint scent of aged whiskey. But something inside the silence shifted, tightened. Tebogo's face filled the screen. Bruised, controlled, trying not to show the pain. He noticed everything. The angle of her shoulders, the way her breath caught just before she spoke, the tension in her jaw when she said she was okay, the faint shadow behind her, movement, not random, structured, organized. He paused the video on a single frame, zoomed slightly, metal behind her, concrete floor, industrial lighting, unstable, not temporary, not improvised. He set the phone down. Only then did he reach for the other line. It rang once. "Hyung?" "Send it to the network," Lam said. No explanation, none needed. "Yes." The line ended. Lam didn't move immediately. He stood exactly where he was, hands resting lightly against the edge of the desk, eyes still on the paused image of her face. He had promised. The memory didn't come as guilt.
It came as clarity. Then he reached for the second phone. This one didn't ring. It connected. A voice answered almost instantly. "Location?" "Pending," Lam replied. "Time?" "Running." A pause. Short. Measured. "We'll begin pressure," the voice said. Lam's gaze shifted back to the glass, to the city that had once belonged to him in a different way, before he had started stepping away, before he had tried to make something cleaner out of something that had never been meant to be. He said, "Not pressure." He quieted. Another pause. Then, "Understood." The call ended. Across the city, things began to move. Not loudly, not visibly. Accounts stalled mid-transfer. Vehicles flagged on systems that didn't usually ask questions. A shipment delayed at a checkpoint that never existed before tonight. A man waiting on a call that didn't come. Another trying to access funds that were no longer there. Threads. Invisible at first, then tightening. Lam picked up the glass beside him. Didn't drink, just held it, watched the way the light bent through it. His phone vibrated once more. A message this time. Coordinates. Preliminary. He studied them for less than a second, then forwarded them. Confirm. The response came almost immediately. Working. Lam set the glass down. His reflection stared back at him from the darkened window, still, composed, unchanged. But the city beneath him was already shifting. Somewhere, doors were being watched, routes were being mapped, names were being pulled from places they thought were hidden. No noise, no warning, just movement. Precise, unavoidable. His phone lit again. Incoming call. Unknown number. He answered. "You saw the video," the voice said. Confident, almost relaxed. Lam didn't respond. "We're not unreasonable," the man continued. "You pay, she walks. Simple." Silence stretched between them. Then, "How much?" Lam asked. A number followed. Large, deliberate, the kind meant to impress. Lam's expression didn't change. "Morning," the voice added. "Don't be late." The line clicked dead. For a moment there was nothing again, just the quiet hum of the room. Then Lam spoke, softly, to no one in particular. No. It wasn't refusal, it wasn't hesitation, it was a decision. He picked up his phone once more, typed, sent. One line. Close everything. Across the city, something invisible shifted again. Not faster, not louder, just final. And somewhere, without understanding why, men who thought they were in control began to feel it. The first crack in certainty, the first sign that something had already begun, and that whatever came next was no longer in their hands. The first sign was small enough to ignore. A call that didn't go through. Cavern Diallo pulled the phone from his ear, frowning at the screen as if the signal itself had offended him. He tried again. Same result. "Network's bad," one of the others muttered from across the room, shifting his rifle against his shoulder. "Storm, maybe." There was no storm. Cavern didn't argue. He slid the phone into his pocket and turned instead to the crate near the wall, flipping it open with a sharp motion. Inside, neatly stacked bundles of cash sat exactly where they should. For now. "Keep eyes on her," he said, not looking back. Behind him, Tebogo remained still. She had learned quickly that stillness gave her space. Space to listen, to measure, to notice the details that mattered more than anything they said out loud. And something had changed. Not in what they were doing, in how they were doing it. The men moved more now, not with urgency, but with a kind of restless edge that hadn't been there before. Their voices dropped lower. Their glances lingered a second longer than necessary. Uncertainty. It lived in the silence between their words. One of them stepped toward her again, the same man who had recorded the video earlier. His movements were sharper now, less deliberate. "Water," he said, holding a bottle out toward her.
not kindness. Procedure. Tebogo accepted it without speaking, her fingers brushing the plastic just briefly before he pulled his hand away. She took a careful sip, keeping her breathing even. "You said your husband would come?" he added, watching her. She met his gaze. "I didn't say when." For a moment, something flickered across his face. Not anger, not quite. Something closer to irritation. Before he could respond, a noise cut through the room. A phone. Not hers, not his. Kavrin's. He answered immediately, stepping away as he spoke. His voice dropped low, but not low enough. "What do you mean it's frozen?" A pause. "That's not possible." Another pause. Longer. Tebogo didn't turn her head, but she listened, carefully. "Check again," Kavrin snapped. "All of them." The line went dead. He stood there for a second, staring at nothing. Then he turned back. "Pack up, we move." The room shifted instantly, boots against concrete, metal scraping, bags being lifted faster than before. One of the men hesitated. "Now?" "Yes, now." "Location?" Kavrin didn't answer right away, because he didn't know. That was new. Tebogo felt it, the difference. It moved through the room like something unseen, something no one had named yet, but everyone had begun to recognize. The edges of control, slipping. Another phone rang. This time, the man nearest the door answered. "What?" he said. Then silence. Then, "What do you mean it's gone?" His voice rose without permission. "What do you mean gone?" Kavrin turned sharply. "What?" The man lowered the phone slowly, his expression no longer guarded. "Vehicles," he said. "All of them flagged. We can't move them." For a second, no one spoke. The generator hummed. The light flickered once, twice. Tebogo's pulse stayed steady, because now she understood. They weren't just moving. They were reacting. And reaction meant they were no longer in control. Kavrin took a step back, running his hair through his hair as if trying to pull the answer out of it. "Then we use the second route," he said quickly. "The one, it's blocked." The other man cut in. Another silence, heavier now, the kind that settled into the bones. Tebogo lowered her gaze slightly, not enough to draw attention, just enough to hide the shift in her expression. Not fear, not relief, recognition. Somewhere far from this room, something had already reached them. Not loud, not visible, but precise and closing. Kavrin looked at her then, really looked, for the first time since she had been brought in, and whatever he saw there didn't make him feel better. It made him understand, too late, that this wasn't going the way they thought it would, that something had already started, and that whatever it wasn't stopping. The panic didn't arrive all at once. It slipped in, quiet, like something leaking through cracks no one had noticed before. Kavrin felt it first, not as fear, as irritation, then confusion, then something sharper. "Get me another line," he snapped, pacing now, no longer still. "We call him again, increase the pressure." No one moved immediately. That hesitation was new. "We already sent the video," one of the men said carefully. "If we push too, I said call him." The words came faster this time, thinner. Controlled, but only just. A second phone was brought forward, older, untraceable, or at least it had been when they acquired it. Kavrin dialed, waited. Nothing. He tried again. The line clicked once, then dropped. He stared at the phone. For a moment, it didn't make sense. "They're blocking us," someone said under their breath. Kavrin turned sharply. "Who?" No answer, because no one knew. Tebogo watched them without appearing to. Her breathing stayed even, her shoulders still pulled back by the restraints, her body exactly where they expected it to be. But her mind moved, fast. They weren't just losing control of the situation, they were losing control of their options. "Fine," Kavrin said suddenly, "then we change tactics." He turned toward her, his eyes harder now, less measured.
If he won't respond, he continued, stepping closer, we give him a reason to. One of the men shifted uneasily. That's not what we agreed. Kavrin ignored him. Get the camera. The air changed, not subtle this time, heavy, immediate. The man with the phone hesitated before lifting it again, angling it toward Tebogo. Closer than before. Too close. Kavrin crouched in front of her, his voice lowering. You're going to speak again, he said, and this time you're going to make him understand. Tebogo held his gaze, didn't flinch, didn't look away. What makes you think he doesn't? She asked quietly. The question landed wrong. Not defiant, not desperate, just certain. Kavrin's jaw tightened. You don't understand what's happening, he said. No, she replied softly. I think you don't. Behind him, another phone rang. Sharp, urgent. The man near the door answered immediately, turning away but not far enough. What? He said. Then silence. Then, no, that's not possible. Kavrin didn't move, didn't turn, but something in his posture shifted. What is it? The man lowered the phone slowly. They found Drezon, he said. A pause. Kavrin's eyes narrowed. And? They didn't find him, the man corrected, his voice thinner now. They got to him. The words hung in the air, heavy, unfinished. Another silence followed, longer this time. Then the man added, he's talking. Something broke, not loudly, not visibly, but completely. Kavrin stood slowly, stepping back from Tebogo as if the space between them had suddenly become dangerous. Shut him down, he said. We can't. Why not? Because everyone already knew the answer. The man swallowed. Because we don't know where he is. That was it. That was the moment. The exact point where control didn't just slip, it vanished. Tebogo felt it settle in her chest. Calm. Certain. They weren't escalating anymore. They were unraveling. Kavrin turned back to her, really looked this time. Not at a hostage, not at leverage, at the center of something he no longer understood. You said he would come, he murmured. Tebogo didn't smile, didn't move, but her voice when she spoke was steady. I didn't say how. The camera in the man's hand lowered slightly. No one told him to. He just did. Because suddenly, recording didn't feel important anymore. Nothing did. Except the quiet realization spreading through the room. They hadn't taken control of the situation. They had stepped into it. And now, every exit they thought they had was already gone.
The lights didn't go out all at once. They flickered first, once, twice, then steadied, just long enough for everyone in the room to look up. The generator's hum faltered, returned, then cut completely. Silence followed. Not the ordinary kind, the kind that pressed in from all sides. Kavrin moved first. Back up, he snapped. Now! No response. One of the men rushed toward the door, fumbling for the handle, pulling it open just enough to peer into the darkness beyond. He didn't step out. He stepped back, slowly. What is it? Kavrin demanded. The man didn't answer, because there was nothing to explain. Just the absence of everything that should have been there. No guards, no movement, no sound. Behind them, something shifted. Not loud, not rushed, just present. Footsteps, measured, unhurried, coming closer. The man at the door raised his weapon, hands no longer steady. Another followed, then another, the sharp clicks of metal echoing too loudly in the confined space. Tebogo didn't move, didn't need to. She had already felt it, before the lights, before the silence, before the first step. He was here. The doorway darkened, not with shadow, with someone standing in it. Lam Tuyen stepped inside like he had always belonged there. No rush, no hesitation, just quiet certainty. His suit was untouched, his expression unchanged, his eyes moving once, taking in the room, the men, the angles, the exits. Then, Her. Everything else stopped mattering. For a moment, the space between them held. Not distance, not time, just recognition. Kavrin found his voice first. He didn't finish, because Lam had already looked away from Tebogo and back at him. You should have taken the money, Kavrin said quickly, words coming faster now, thinner. We can still... No, Lam said. The interruption was soft, final, not raised, not forced, just done. One of the men tightened his grip on his weapon, another shifted his stance, uncertain whether to aim or retreat. No one fired, because something in the room made it clear they were already too late. Lam stepped forward, one step, then another. The distance closed without resistance. Kavrin's voice broke slightly. You don't understand. I do, Lam replied. He stopped just short of him, close enough. More than you do. Another silence. He didn't need to say anything else, didn't need to threaten, didn't need to explain, because whatever had been done had already been done. Behind him, movement, quiet, controlled, the edges of the room filling without sound, without announcement, the kind of presence that didn't arrive. It was simply there. Kavrin saw it too. That was when his shoulders dropped. Not surrender, not exactly. Just the moment a man understands the outcome is no longer his to decide. Lam turned away from him, again, like he no longer mattered, and walked toward her. Tebogo held his gaze as he approached. Closer now, close enough to see the details, the tension held tightly beneath his calm, the faint shift in his breathing, the way his eyes softened just slightly when they settled on her. Not weakness, never that. Something quieter, something deeper. I'm here, he said, simple, steady. The knife appeared in his hand without her noticing when he reached for the rope. The fibers gave way quickly, falling loose as her arms dropped forward, the sudden freedom almost disorienting. For a second, she didn't move. Then she did. Not rushed, not desperate, just forward. Her fingers found the front of his jacket first, gripping lightly, as if confirming he was real, solid, not something imagined in the dark. Lam didn't pull her close immediately. He let her choose it, and when she did, he held her, carefully, like something that had almost been lost. I'm sorry, he said, quietly. The words didn't sound like defeat. They sounded like truth. Tebogo rested against him just briefly, her breathing steadying, her body no longer held by force, but by something else entirely. Then she pulled back just enough to look at him, really look. You came, she said. No accusation, no fear, just certainty. Lam's hand remained at her back, steady, always steady. Yes, that was all. And somehow, it was everything.